Take your hand off his collar. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The Pentagon security officer stopped with his fingers 2 inches from the worn black leather around Rook's neck. My sister turned toward the donors behind her and gave them a tight, embarrassed smile. Do you see what I mean? Victoria said. This is what untreated combat trauma looks like. The sentence traveled farther than she intended. Conversations thinned across the reception hall. Rook stood between us. 12 years old, gray around the muzzle, his right hip trembling from the effort. He was not growling, he was not showing his teeth. His nose was fixed on a black equipment case beside the stage. He is alerting, I said. He is confused, Victoria answered. He is an old dog remembering a war that ended years ago. The officer asked me to shorten the leash. I bent down. My sleeve caught against the metal clip and slid above my elbow. 4 black characters appeared on the inside of my forearm. K417, the young army dog handler assisting security, looked at the tattoo. Then he looked inside Rook's torn left ear. His face changed. Ma'am, he said quietly, where did you get that identifier? Before I could answer, the equipment case was opened. A sealed training scent aid rolled against the foam lining. The young handler stared at Rook, then at me. Is this Rook? Across the room, a 4-star general stopped in the middle of shaking Victoria's hand. 37 minutes earlier, I had believed the worst thing my sister could do that night was pretend I did not exist. I was wrong. My invitation had come directly from the Pentagon Military Working Dog Heritage Office. The email was simple. Retired military working dog Rook had been selected for recognition during a reception supporting veteran transition programs. His former handler was requested to escort him, former handler. That meant me. 3 days later, Victoria called. Her foundation was producing the reception, she explained. Homefront Legacy had secured the venue, coordinated the donors, and built the campaign around veterans who returned from service. Changed. She said the word changed like it belonged inside quotation marks. You received the invitation, she asked. I did. And you are bringing Rook? That is generally how escorting him works. She ignored the answer. The program is very controlled. There will be senior officers, defense leaders, press, and representatives from the Carson Trust. I had heard about the Carson Trust. Everyone in my family had. $8 million over 4 years. If Victoria secured the commitment, she would be named Executive Vice President of Homefront Legacy. The new role came with a larger salary, national visibility, and the one thing my sister valued more than either. Authority over the story. Rook is cleared, I said. I know, I helped approve the final list. That sentence should have warned me. Then she asked what I planned to wear. I told her a dark suit. No uniform, I retired 2 years ago. Right, of course. Victoria knew that. She had skipped my retirement ceremony because her daughter had a tennis tournament. My mother had gone with her. Dad had been dead for 3 years by then, so nobody had needed to invent an excuse for him. Victoria said, please keep the tattoo covered. I looked down at my left forearm even though she could not see me. K417, Rook's service identifier. The invitation did not include a tattoo policy. Erin, what? You know how people react. People usually ask. That is exactly the problem. Tonight cannot become one of your stories. I had not told Victoria a real deployment story in almost 14 years. She still lived in fear of them, not because the stories were graphic. Because every detail threatened the version of me she preferred. In her version, she had stayed home and carried the family. I had left and played soldier. Only one of those statements was completely false. Victoria had carried a lot. When Dad suffered his first stroke, she drove him to appointments. She handled the insurance appeals. She changed the rails in his bathroom. She sat with Mom through 2 surgeries and organized the meals when I was stationed in Germany. I sent money. I took leave when I could. I called from whatever country and time zone the Army had placed me in. But distance is difficult to photograph. Victoria's sacrifice had witnesses. Mine arrived as deposits, short phone calls, and holiday cards with whole paragraphs removed by security review. I respect what she did. She decided respecting her sacrifice required erasing mine. The distinction took me years to understand. On the afternoon of the reception, I brushed Rook in my kitchen. He had once hated grooming. Age had made him more diplomatic. He stood on a rubber mat while I worked loose hair from his shoulders. My left wrist ached around the brush, old service damage that flared whenever I held the same grip too long. His coat was darker along the spine and almost silver around the face. The scar at the edge of his left ear had faded, the dent in his collar buckle had not. I ran my thumb over it. The buckle had been crushed against a vehicle step during his last deployment. The Army replaced the collar after the mission. I kept the damaged one. When Rook retired, I put it back on him, not every day. Only when we went somewhere that required him to remember who he had been. He did not need the reminder. I did. You ready? I asked. He sneezed into my shirt. Good talk. The drive from Frederick to Arlington took longer than usual. Rook slept across the back seat on an old Army blanket. Every time traffic slowed, his nose lifted before his eyes opened. His body had aged. The part of him that monitored movement had not. At the Pentagon visitor entrance, the security officer checked my identification and the separate animal clearance. He looked at the line twice. Retired military working dog? Yes, sir. Explosive detection? Yes. He looked down at Rook. Rook looked back. Still working, only if somebody drops chicken. The officer smiled. You are both on the list. Both. I remember the word because 20 minutes later, my name had disappeared from everything else. A volunteer handed me the printed program. The cover carried a photograph of a military working dog standing on a dusty road. Only part of the handler was visible, a gloved hand. A sleeve, the edge of a knee. I knew the dog, I knew the collar. I knew the way his left ear bent when the wind came from behind him. It was Rook, 9 years younger. My hand held the leash. My body had been cropped from the frame. I opened the program. Halfway down the schedule was the recognition segment. Military working dog Rook, no handler, no unit, no history. Just the dog. I read the line again. My original invitation had included both names. Staff Sergeant Erin Caldwell and military working dog Rook. A woman in a navy blazer approached. She was Lieutenant Colonel Naomi Price, the officer overseeing the heritage component. Staff Sergeant Caldwell retired. She smiled, sorry. Habit, I am glad you made it. She looked at the program in my hand. Her smile weakened. Is there a problem? Was I removed from the recognition? Price took the program. That is not the copy I approved. Before she could say more, Victoria appeared, cream suit. Foundation pin, wireless earpiece, laminated run sheet. My sister dressed for important nights as if wrinkles were a moral failure. Erin, you are early. I'm on time. She glanced at Price. Colonel Ellen Park needs you near the exhibition cases. Price did not move. The program copy omitted Staff Sergeant Caldwell. Victoria looked at the page. Yes, we simplified the segment. You removed the handler. The dog is the focus. Price's expression cooled. The working dog team is the focus. Victoria gave a patient smile. With respect, Colonel, we have 4 minutes. The audience responds more strongly to the animal. Erin does not enjoy speaking publicly anyway. I looked at her. You did not ask. You would have said no. That is not permission to decide. Victoria's jaw tightened. Price said, I want the original wording restored on the digital screen. Victoria touched her earpiece. I will see what can be done. She would not. I knew the tone. Price was called away before she could press further. Victoria waited until we were alone. Do not turn this into a battle. I came because the Pentagon invited us, and I am trying to protect the event. From my name, from unpredictability, I looked down at Rook. He was sitting beside my shoe. What exactly is unpredictable? You. The word landed without ornament. Victoria checked over her shoulder to see whether anyone had heard. Then she lowered her voice. You disappear for years. You come home and refuse to discuss anything. You wear a dog's identification number on your arm. You bring him everywhere. Nobody knows what will set either of you off. Rook yawned. I said, he has attended more formal military events than you have. That does not make this normal. No, your behavior is doing most of that work. Her mouth tightened. Then Mom called her name. Deborah Caldwell walked toward us wearing a navy dress, and the expression she had used throughout our childhood whenever conflict threatened to become visible. Girls, we were both over 40. She still called us girls when she wanted obedience without choosing a side. Mom hugged Victoria first, then she touched my shoulders. Her eyes moved immediately to Rook. You brought the old collar. Yes, she saw the program in my hand. What happened? Victoria removed my name. Mom looked at my sister. Victoria answered before she could ask. It is a dog recognition. Erin does not need to be announced. Mom gave me the small pleading look that had ended 1,000 family arguments. Maybe tonight is not the time for my name for a disagreement. The two had become the same thing. Victoria said, thank you. I looked at Mom. She had attended exactly one of my motions. Not because she opposed my career, because military ceremonies made her uncomfortable. Too many uniforms, too much language she did not understand. Too many strangers who knew things about me she did not. Victoria's world was easier: foundation dinners, donor photographs. Programs with clean fonts and controlled stories. Mom said your sister has worked 5 years for this. I looked at the campaign photograph on the program. Rook's face, my missing body she has, then please let her have tonight. Victoria walked away before I answered. That was her talent. She could make a demand and leave Mom behind to absorb the consequences. The main reception hall had been transformed with temporary displays. Old radios, photographs of handlers and dogs, protective equipment. A glass case containing retired collars, harnesses, and identification records. On the central stage, a large banner displayed the same cropped photograph of Rook. Beneath it, "Honor those who came home changed." The slogan irritated me before I understood why. Then I saw the campaign booklet. One page described the invisible work of rebuilding trust after war. The photograph showed Rook watching a road. The caption did not identify him. It called him an unnamed retired working dog, unnamed. I stood in front of it longer than I should have. A man beside me said, "Powerful image." I looked at him. He wore a Carson Trust badge. It is. "Do you know the dog?" I opened my mouth. Victoria appeared. Again, "This image came from a defense archive," she said. "We chose not to identify the team because we wanted them to represent every veteran family." The man nodded. "Smart." I looked at my sister. She did know it was a specific team. The archive metadata would have included our names. Perhaps she had never opened it. Perhaps her media staff had. Either possibility told me something. The man asked, "Was your sister a handler too?" Victoria smiled. "Erin worked with dogs in the army." The phrasing made my career sound like a summer job at a shelter. He looked at me. "That must create quite a bond." "It does." Victoria said, "Sometimes too much of one." The man laughed because he assumed she was joking. I did not. Mom found me near the water station. She handed me coffee. No sugar. She remembered that. Small acts of attention can survive inside large patterns of neglect. "You look angry," she said. "I am thinking that is usually when you look angriest." I almost smiled. Then she glanced at the tattoo beneath my cuff. "You promised Victoria you would cover it." "I promised nothing." She says donors might misunderstand. They can ask. "Erin, not everybody needs the full story." I looked toward the stage. Rook's image filled the backdrop. They seem happy to use part of it. Mom followed my eyes. "It is just a dog photograph." I stared at her. She realized too late what she had said. "I did not mean Rook is just a dog. What did you mean?" She lowered her voice. "Why do you always make everything so difficult?" The old question. Never "Why is this difficult for you?" Always "Why are you making it difficult for us?" I set the coffee down. "Because easy versions of me keep getting used without my permission." Mom's expression tightened. "Victoria stayed, Erin." There it was, the family ledger. "She was here when your father needed us." "I know. She carried things you never saw." "I know." "Then sometimes you could let her have something." I looked at the program again. My name removed. My dog turned into an anonymous symbol. My history turned into campaign language. She already took it. Mom walked away before she had to ask what I meant. The retired working dog recognition was scheduled before the donor announcement. Lieutenant Colonel Price found me near the heritage display. "The screen has not been corrected," I noticed. "I am handling it." "Do not derail the event for me." Her eyebrows rose. "This is not only about you, I know. Removing a handler from a working dog team is professionally inaccurate." That sentence helped, not emotionally, structurally. Someone else understood the problem without needing a family history. Price knelt near Rook. "May I greet him?" "Yes." She offered her hand. Rook sniffed it and leaned forward. "He looks good." "He lies," she smiled. General Weller asked whether he had arrived. My chest tightened. "Weller? You know him?" "Not personally." That was almost true. I had met Michael Weller once. 9 years earlier, he had been a colonel commanding the convoy Rook stopped. We spoke for less than a minute after the operation. He thanked me. I told him to thank the dog. Rook stole part of his sandwich. That was the relationship. I knew Weller had risen through the army. I had not known he was the 4-star keynote guest Victoria mentioned for weeks. Price said he has been delayed by another meeting. Good, she looked amused. "You do not want to see him?" "I do not want tonight to become a reunion show." Price stood. "That may be beyond my authority." A staff handler began preparing the demonstration area. Sergeant First Class Mateo Ruiz was younger than me by at least 10 years. He moved with the quiet efficiency handlers learn around animals and nervous people. Several sealed scent aids were used for the educational display. They contained controlled training odor, not dangerous material. Ruiz checked each canister against a list. One was missing. I did not know that yet. What I knew was that Rook had stopped resting. His head lifted, nostrils worked. He turned away from me and focused on a black transport case beside the stage. I felt the change through the leash. Old handlers sometimes say the dog tells you. That makes it sound mystical. It is not. The leash tightens differently. The shoulders settle, breathing changes, the animal stops being old. Rook stood, his right hip shook. He moved 3 steps toward the case. I followed, easy. He ignored me. That was information. Rook reached the case and sat. His alert had never been dramatic. No barking, no scratching. He simply placed his body beside the thing he wanted the world to notice. Ruiz saw him, his expression sharpened. He came toward us. Before he arrived, Victoria stepped off the stage. What is happening? He is alerting. To what? The case. She looked at Rook as though he had insulted a donor. He cannot be working. Apparently he did not receive the program. A few guests smiled. Victoria heard them. Her face changed. Move him. Not until the case is checked. It is event equipment. So check it. She lowered her voice. You are creating a scene. No, Rook is sitting. Ruiz reached us. Ma'am, was that a trained final response? Yes, he looked at the case. A volunteer said it contained audio equipment. Ruiz asked who had packed it. Nobody answered immediately. Victoria's panic accelerated. The dog is retired. He is confused by the demonstration odors. Ruiz remained calm. That is possible. We still check. Victoria looked toward Ellen Park and the Carson representatives. All 3 were watching, not in the middle of the reception. Ruiz said, especially in the middle of the reception. He motioned for security, professional procedure, no alarm. The nearest security officer approached and established space around the case. Guests were asked to move back several feet. The entire process took less than a minute. Victoria experienced every second as a public attack. She turned to me. You could have pulled him away. I could have ignored him. He is not on duty. His nose did not retire. His mind may have. The words went through me cold. Be careful. Victoria saw the warning and mistook restraint for fear. She raised her voice. This is exactly what I warned the event team about. Several heads turned. I looked at her. What did you warn them about? She hesitated. Too late. That you and the dog are emotionally dependent on each other. Mom appeared beside her, Victoria, but Victoria was committed now. She pointed toward Rook. He is 12 years old. He limps. A piece of equipment makes a noise and suddenly Erin thinks she is back in a war zone. The case made no noise. That makes it worse. Ruiz glanced at me. He understood what she was doing, Victoria continued. She cannot tell the difference anymore, neither can he. The security officer asked me to shorten the leash. I did. Rook stayed seated beside the case. Victoria looked at the donors. I apologize. My sister has struggled to adjust since retirement. I felt the room change, not because people believed her completely. Because she had handed them a frame, unstable veteran. Over-attached dog, public disruption, everything after would be interpreted through it. I said you removed my name from the program. Her face tightened. This is not the time. You told the event team I was unstable. I said you might become overwhelmed. You used my photograph. It is a Defense Department image. It is me. The words produced a ripple. Victoria stared. Mom looked toward the banner. Ellen Park came closer. What does she mean? Victoria answered quickly. She believes the campaign dog is Rook. I know it is Rook. You cannot possibly know that from one photograph. I looked at the bent ear, the dented buckle, my own glove. I was holding the leash. The man from the Carson Trust looked from the banner to Rook. Mom followed his eyes. Victoria recovered by attacking. You always do this. Do what? Take an event that is helping thousands of people and force it to revolve around your service. I have not told one war story tonight. You do not have to. You bring the dog, the tattoo, the silence. You stand there waiting for people to ask. She did not stumble over a single word. Mom says, Erin, maybe you should take Rook outside. I looked at her. She would rather remove me than challenge Victoria. Again, why? To let things settle. Nothing settles when I leave. It just becomes your preferred version. The security officer crouched beside the black case. Ruiz opened it under controlled procedure. Inside the foam lining was a sealed metal scent canister. Ruiz picked it up, his face hardened. That is the missing training aid. The volunteer beside him went pale. I thought that case was empty. Ruiz checked the label. It was packed after the demonstration layout changed. He looked at Rook. He alerted correctly. The room absorbed that. Victoria did not. It was harmless. Ruiz said the question was whether the dog was confused. She turned on him. He disrupted the event over a training sample. No, ma'am, the sample was misplaced. The dog located it. Ruiz set the labeled canister back into the foam. Victoria's fingers tightened around the edge of her run sheet. She looked at me. You staged this. I almost laughed. You think I hid a scent canister in Pentagon event equipment? I think you knew the demonstration used them. That is not an answer. Ellen Park said. Victoria, stop. My sister did not. Victoria pressed the edge of the laminated run sheet into her palm. Her eyes flicked toward the Carson badges before returning to me. You never know when to stand down, Erin. That was always your problem. Ruiz stopped beside the open case. The security officer looked up from the canister. I looked at her. She had reached for the deepest family accusation available. You could not stand down for Dad. You could not come home and stay home. Now you drag this dog into every room so nobody forgets you once wore a uniform. Mom whispered her name. Victoria's eyes shone. She had wanted to say it for years. You left us to do the actual work, she said. Then you come back with medals and scars and expect silence to look noble. The security officer asked me to step to the side while they reconfirmed the animal roster and cleared the equipment area. I nodded. Professional request. I would not punish him for my sister's behavior. I bent to gather Rook's leash. My sleeve caught on the collar buckle. The fabric slid up. K417 appeared. Ruiz saw it. His eyes moved to the faded mark inside Rook's left ear. He took one step closer. Ma'am, I straightened. Where did you get that identifier? Ruiz stared at Rook, then at the scar on his ear. Is this K417? Yes, his voice dropped. Is this Rook? Across the hall, a new group had entered. Senior officers, 2 aides, General Michael Weller. Victoria changed instantly, her face reorganized into professional calm. She touched her hair, adjusted her jacket, and moved toward him before Ellen could stop her. General Weller, welcome. He shook her hand. Thank you. Victoria began her practiced introduction. Homefront Legacy is honored to host. Ruiz said Rook's name again, not loudly. Weller heard it. His eyes left my sister. He looked across the hall. At first I do not think he recognized me. He recognized the dog. Rook's head lifted. The old dog smelled him. His tail moved once against the floor. Weller stopped in the middle of Victoria's sentence. Sir, she asked. He released her hand. Then he walked past her. The hall quieted as people noticed. Weller crossed the open space toward Rook. 4 stars on his shoulders. No hurry, no performance. When he reached us, he looked down for several seconds. Rook looked back. Weller lowered himself onto one knee. The most senior man in the room placed his uniform trousers on the floor in front of the dog Victoria had just called confused and unstable. Hello, Rook. Rook leaned forward. His gray muzzle settled into Weller's palm. Weller closed his eyes for a moment. Then Rook licked the side of his thumb. The general laughed quietly. You still steal food? He prefers senior officers, I said. Weller looked up. Recognition arrived more slowly this time. Caldwell? Yes, sir. He stood. Staff sergeant. Retired. I heard. His eyes moved to the tattoo, then the dented buckle. You kept the number. I kept the dog. Better choice. Victoria stood behind him. Her confusion had turned into calculation. General, I had no idea you knew Erin's pet. Weller turned. Pet, the single word corrected the room. Victoria tried again. Her retired dog. Weller looked at Rook. 9 years ago that dog stopped my convoy from entering a compromised route. The volunteer beside the case stepped back from the foam lining. Victoria's expression emptied. Weller did not dramatize the story. That made it more powerful. The route had been swept once, he said. The lead team found one device. Pressure was building to move. Rook stopped at a drainage cut and alerted again. I remembered the heat first, then the dust, then the impatient lieutenant behind me. The route had been delayed. Every officer wanted movement. Rook had been working for hours. His tongue hung low. His stride shortened, then his body locked. He turned back toward a patch of broken soil the first sweep had passed. He checked it twice, then sat. The lieutenant said, that shoulder is clear. I said, my dog disagrees. He told me to move him forward. I refused, not loudly. I repeated that Rook had a trained response. The convoy held. EOD checked again. The secondary device was positioned where the following vehicles would compress against the shoulder after the lead vehicle passed. 3 vehicles would have entered the danger area. Weller had been in the second. He told the room only that much. Caldwell trusted the dog when several people wanted her to dismiss the alert. He looked at Victoria. The people who make a difference are often the ones willing to become inconvenient at exactly the right time. My sister swallowed, Weller continued. Later that day, another blast injured Rook. Caldwell carried his front half to the treatment point, while another soldier supported his hips. Rook shifted beside me as if the story bored him. Good. He did not need to live in it. Weller looked at the black equipment case. What happened here? Ruiz explained the misplaced training aid. Weller looked down at Rook. 12 years old, yes, sir. And still correct. Yes, Victoria said the canister was not dangerous. Weller looked at her. No one said it was. Her face tightened. He added, but you said the dog was confused. Victoria tried to speak. Ellen Park interrupted. General, the Foundation's campaign image appears to be Rook. Weller turned toward the banner. He stared. Then he stepped closer. The photograph showed young Rook on the dusty road. My body cropped away. Weller looked at the visible glove. Then at me. Where is the original? The media coordinator hesitated. Victoria said, this is the approved crop. That was not my question. The coordinator opened the archive record on a tablet. The metadata appeared first. Military working dog Rook. Handler Sergeant Erin Caldwell, route security operation. The uncropped photograph loaded. There I was, 30 years old. Dust across my face, one knee beside Rook, my left hand on his collar. The dented buckle visible. Behind us, Colonel Michael Weller spoke with an EOD officer. The image on the campaign banner had not merely excluded a generic handler. It had cropped the campaign's own uninvited subject out of her history. Ellen Park took the tablet. She read the caption, then looked at Victoria. You knew this was a specific team. Victoria said the media staff selected it. The coordinator shook his head. We sent the full image and caption with the first design. Victoria looked at him. That is not accurate. He opened an email. The revision request came from your office. Ellen read it aloud. Remove handler, crop tightly on dog, keep image universal. The media coordinator lowered the tablet a few inches. Ellen kept one finger beside the revision line. Across the aisle, the Carson representative folded his arms and looked away from Victoria. I looked at Victoria. For years I had wondered whether my erasure was passive. A family habit, a collection of easy assumptions. Now I knew that at least this time it had been an instruction. Victoria saw the knowledge arrive. It was a design decision. You removed my name from the program too, I said. Ellen looked at Lieutenant Colonel Price. Price produced the approved draft. It listed both of us. The final run sheet in Victoria's hand listed only Rook. Ellen asked, did you authorize this revision? Victoria's voice thinned. The dog was more effective for donor engagement. There are sentences that end careers because they reveal competence. Others end careers because they reveal character. This one did both. Weller stepped away. He did not threaten her. He did not demand she bow. He did not touch the Foundation's money. He had completed his role. He had recognized the dog and corrected the history. The rest belonged to the witnesses. Ellen said, Victoria, you are removed from the remaining speaking program. My sister stared. The commitment announcement is in 8 minutes. I know, I secured that pledge. The board secured it. The Carson Trust expects me on stage. A Carson representative spoke from behind Ellen. We expect the program to serve veterans. Victoria's eyes moved toward him. He continued, we do not require you to announce it. Her hand tightened around the laminated run sheet. $8 million, 4 years, 5 years of work. One role she had built her identity around. I could have stayed silent. Instead, I said, do not withdraw the funding. Everyone looked at me. Ellen said, that decision is not being made here. Good. I looked at the Carson representative. The people receiving transition assistance did not remove my name. The caregivers did not call Rook unstable. Do not make them collateral damage. The representative nodded. The pledge remains. Victoria stared at me. She had expected revenge. What she received was a boundary. Ellen said, the board will appoint an interim campaign lead tonight. Victoria, your communications authority is suspended pending a formal review. Not fired, not destroyed, removed from control. For my sister, that was worse. Mom approached me after the announcement. The reception had restarted in a different shape. A board member stood on stage. The Carson pledge received applause. Rook drank from a paper bowl near the wall. Victoria had disappeared into a side corridor with Ellen and 2 board members. Mom said I did not know. I kept my eyes on Rook. You knew my name was missing. I thought it was a small thing. It was small. She looked confused. That is why it was easy to defend. Mom folded her hands. I did not know the photograph was you. You did not recognize Rook. I did not think. I know. The words stopped her. I looked at her. That is the problem. Her eyes filled. Why did you never tell us about General Weller? I told Dad Rook stopped a convoy. Mom frowned. When? The first Christmas after I came home. Memory moved behind her face. Victoria had interrupted that conversation. She had asked Dad whether hearing another army story was good for his blood pressure. Everybody laughed. I stopped talking, Mom remembered. Her mouth opened, then closed. I thought you were exaggerating. I looked past her toward Rook before I could answer. Why, I do not know. Yes, you do. She looked toward the corridor where Victoria had gone. Because she was here. There it was, the family equation. Presence became truth, distance came some suspicion. Mom said she took care of us. I know, you were gone. I know, I needed that to mean something. It did mean something. Mom looked at me. Then why does it feel like I chose wrong? Because you decided only one daughter was allowed to have sacrificed. She started crying. I did not hug her, not yet. A sincere apology does not require immediate physical comfort from the person who was harmed. Mom whispered, can you forgive me? I can forgive you for not understanding military work. She waited. I cannot keep making myself smaller so the family story stays simple. She nodded slowly. That was not forgiveness, it was the door to work. Victoria found me near the exit. Her earpiece was gone. Her cream jacket had been unbuttoned. For the first time that night, she looked like a person rather than a position. Are you happy? No, you should be. Why? You got everything. I looked at Rook. He was tired enough that his right leg dragged slightly. I came with everything I needed. Victoria laughed without humor. Of course, the dog. I shortened the leash and matched his slower pace. Victoria stepped in front of me. 5 years, Erin. I know, I built that campaign. I know, I negotiated every donor agreement. I sat through every board meeting. I convinced people that veteran transition was worth funding. I know, and one old dog walks into the room and suddenly none of it matters. I looked at her. That is not what happened. It is exactly what happened. No. One old dog walked into the room and showed whether you believed the campaign you built. Her face tightened. You have no idea what it was like here. I know what you did for Dad. No, you do not. I know about the insurance appeals. I know you drove him to physical therapy. I know you changed the bathroom rails. I know you stayed in the hospital after his second stroke. She stared. I sent money for the private nurse. That was money. It was what I could send from Germany. You always had somewhere more important to be. That was not how orders worked. You chose the army. At 18, and we lived with it for 20 years. She said lived with it, not served beside it. Victoria's voice shook. When Dad talked about you, it was always where Erin is. What Erin is doing, when Erin might come home. I was standing in the kitchen holding his medication, and he was asking whether your dog had passed certification. Her fingers closed around the front of her jacket. You deserve to be seen, I said. She looked surprised. You deserved credit for staying. You deserved help. You deserved more than pharmacy receipts and thank you calls. Her eyes filled. Then I said, you did not have to erase me to become visible. She looked away. The campaign image was stronger without a face. That is what you told yourself it was. You removed the name from the program. The donors wanted the dog. You wanted the dog. Her eyes returned to me. You did not want the handler because the handler was your sister. Silence. There it was. The truth. Neither of us could dress professionally. Victoria whispered, you always walk into a room and make me feel ordinary. I shook my head. No, you walk into rooms already afraid you are ordinary. She flinched. I continued more softly. I cannot fix that by disappearing. Rook sat down, conversation over. He had always known when enough was enough. Victoria looked at him, for the first time, not as a campaign image. Not as a threat, as an old dog whose hind legs were failing. What happens to him now? He goes home. No more events? Only the ones he enjoys. She looked at the tattoo on my arm. K417. Yes, you put an inventory number on your body. No, I touched the ink. I put the name the army gave him where nobody else could crop it out. Victoria closed her eyes. That was the moment she finally understood. Not the mission, not the general, the erasure. General Weller met us outside near the visitor exit. He had removed his cap and carried it beneath one arm. An aide waited several yards away. I started to stand straighter. He waved it off. Let the army survive one conversation without a position of attention. Rook lowered himself beside a bench. Weller sat. I joined him. For a while, neither of us spoke. Rook placed his head on my boot. Weller said, "He looks older. He feels the same about you." The general smiled. "How bad are the hips? Worse in cold weather?" "Medication? More expensive than mine." Weller nodded as if that sounded like the army. Then he looked at the tattoo. I remember the identifier now. "You remembered the dog first. I usually do." "Good." He watched Rook breathe. "Did you know they used the photograph?" "No." "Did you know your sister ran the campaign?" "Yes, that sounds complicated. That is the polite military term." Weller leaned back. "I am sorry the story came out that way." "I am not." He looked at me. "I would have preferred honesty without an audience." "That is rarely how families operate." He considered that. True. A gust of air moved across the pavement. Rook's ear shifted. Weller said, "He does not owe anyone another demonstration." "I know. You do not either." I looked at him. That sentence landed differently. For years I had believed my silence proved I did not need recognition. In reality, some of it had been self-protection. If I never explained, nobody could dismiss the full truth. They could only dismiss a smaller version. I had not understood that smaller dismissals still caused damage. "I should have corrected them sooner," I said. "Maybe." I looked at him. He shrugged. "People like simple stories." "Correction does not guarantee they listen." "No, but it makes the lie belong entirely to them." That was useful. Before Weller left, he crouched beside Rook again. "Good boy." Rook opened one eye. The general reached into his pocket. "Still stealing food, sir?" He produced a piece of plain chicken from a reception plate wrapped in a napkin. I came prepared. Rook took it with more dignity than either of us deserved. 10 days later, Homefront Legacy announced that the Carson Trust pledge remained in place. $8 million over 4 years. The public statement said the foundation had appointed an interim communications director while conducting an internal governance review. Victoria's name did not appear. She was not fired. For the 12-month review, the board moved her into an operational role and removed her donor access, stage authority, and final approval over every piece of public campaign copy. She hated it. That did not make it unjust. The review found that she had removed my name from the program, ordered the photograph cropped, and described me to event staff as a potential emotional disruption. Nothing criminal, nothing that required a courtroom. Just a documented pattern of using veteran stories while controlling which veterans were allowed to speak. Consequences do not need prison bars to be real. Mom called 3 days after the reception. She did not begin with an apology. She asked what was Rook trained to detect. A real question, I answered. She asked how handlers learned to read a dog's alert. Then how long Rook and I had worked together. She did not interrupt. At the end, she said, "I should have asked years ago." Yes, no comfort, no punishment, accuracy. She began visiting every other Sunday. At first, Rook ignored her. Then he learned she carried turkey. Relationships have been repaired on worse foundations. Victoria took 4 months to call. When she did, she said, "I saw the full photograph again. I waited. You looked tired." I was. Rook looked proud. He was hungry. She laughed once. Then stopped. "I thought cropping you out made the image universal." "No, I know. What did it make it?" She was quiet for a long time. "Easier for me." That was the first honest answer. Our relationship did not return to normal. Normal had been the problem. We started again with smaller things. She stopped introducing me as the sister who worked with dogs. I stopped pretending her years caring for Dad had not changed her. Neither of us asked the other to erase herself to make the equation balance. Rook lived another 10 months. His last winter was mild. On good mornings, he walked to the end of the block and back. On bad mornings, he stood at the porch and judged the weather. He never attended another formal event. He had done enough. On his final day, I sat on the kitchen floor with his head in my lap. The dented collar rested beneath my palm. K417 lay against the black leather. The same identifier in ink, the same identifier beneath his torn ear. One number carried by 2 bodies that had trusted each other when trust became inconvenient. No general, no donors, no campaign banner, only ordinary afternoon light and the refrigerator turning on behind us. Rook's breathing slowed. I pressed my forehead against his. "You can stand down now." For the first time in our life together, he did. Months later, Lieutenant Colonel Price asked whether the old collar could be displayed at the military working dog school. I said no, not because it did not belong in history. Because some things are not evidence, they are home. The collar hangs beside my front door now. My mother touches the dented buckle whenever she visits. Victoria does not yet. The campaign still uses the photograph. The full photograph. My name appears beneath it, so does Rook's. I did not ask for that correction. I did not refuse it either. For most of my life, I thought dignity meant never needing anybody to know what I had done. I was wrong. Dignity is not disappearing. It is refusing to perform for approval while also refusing to let other people falsify the record. My sister believed she had to crop me out to make her own sacrifice visible. My mother believed keeping peace meant supporting the person who made the room easiest. I believed silence kept me above the conflict. All three beliefs caused damage. Revenge did not repair any of it. Truth created the possibility. Boundaries did the rest. There will always be people who love the symbol of service more than the person who served. They love the young dog in the photograph, not the old dog whose legs shake. They love the word veteran on a banner, not the veteran who corrects their story. They love sacrifice once it has been cropped, cleaned, and made useful. Do not let them convince you that refusing to disappear is the same as demanding attention. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who has ever been asked to disappear, so another person's story could stay simple. Sometimes you are not asking to become the center of the picture. You are only asking them to stop cutting you out of it.